It is the mid-1990s. A young woman stands beneath the blinding lights of a Paris runway, her cheekbones as sharp as her stride, her presence impossible to ignore. She is Beverly Peele, the face plastered across more than 200 magazine covers, the muse of Dior, Chanel, and Tommy Hilfiger. For a moment, she appears untouchable, destined to take her place alongside Naomi Campbell and Beverly Johnson as one of the greats. But behind the perfection of glossy covers, the truth was already beginning to fracture. At just 17, she carried a secret that would shake her career. Soon, a devastating accident would threaten her very ability to walk. And years later, when she dared to speak out against one of fashion's most powerful men, the industry responded not with justice, but with silence. So what happened to Beverly Peele? How did the girl who was meant to be fashion's next unstoppable force become the woman the industry would rather erase? And why does her story still matter today? Beverly Peele wasn't born into elegance or elite connections. She came from Englewood, California, a city known more for its grit than its glamour. Raised in a working-class household, Beverly grew up far from the fashion capital she would later command. She was a quiet, observant child, often described as introspective, even withdrawn. No one could have predicted that this soft-spoken girl would become one of the defining faces of the 1990s. Her entrance into modeling wasn't calculated or strategic. It was a chance discovery. At the age of 12, Beverly was scouted while accompanying her mother on an errand. Within months, her life transformed. By 14, she was shooting editorials for Mademoiselle in 17, and by 15, she was walking for fashion royalty. But it wasn't just her looks that captivated the camera. There was something haunting in her gaze, a mixture of strength and vulnerability that made her unforgettable. The camera didn't just love her, it needed her. By 16, she had graced the cover of Vogue, becoming one of the youngest Black models to do so since Beverly Johnson's historic breakthrough in the 1970s. It wasn't just a career milestone, it was a cultural moment. Beverly Peele was no longer the girl from Englewood. She was the industry's next obsession. And yet, behind the scenes, she was still a teenager, navigating a world built by adults for adults. Contracts, castings, and continents away from home, Beverly entered womanhood not gradually, but all at once. She was expected to hold her own among giants, even as she was still growing into her own shadow. In the golden age of the supermodel, Beverly Peele wasn't just part of the conversation. She was the conversation. She walked into casting rooms and turned heads without saying a word. Her presence was cinematic, towering, enigmatic, and electric. Designers didn't just want her, they fought over her. By the early 90s, Beverly had become a face the industry couldn't ignore. She strutted down runways for Chanel, Dior, and Comme des Garçons. Tommy Hilfiger made her one of his central muses, featuring her in campaigns that defined American cool. Her image was everywhere, from Times Square billboards to international fashion glossies. She became one of the few Black models consistently booked for high fashion editorials, a beacon in an industry still dominated by white aesthetics. But Beverly wasn't trying to fit in. She brought her own rhythm to the catwalk, fluid, confident, and distinctly hers. In an era where models often conformed to archetypes, Beverly defied them. She was Black, beautiful, bold, and undeniably American. She was also fearless in crossing over. While most models stayed within the confines of fashion, Beverly moved with ease between style and culture. She appeared in music videos for Jodeci and Heavy D, and was featured in Luther Vandross's sultry visuals. She wasn't just modeling clothes, she was modeling an attitude, a new kind of fame. And yet, even at her peak, Beverly wasn't just carrying her own dreams. She was carrying the weight of representation. In every cover shoot, every runway strut, she embodied what it meant to be a young Black woman succeeding in spaces that weren't built for her. Every step forward was a statement. Every pose was political. The industry adored her, but only so long as she stayed silent, flawless, and easy to market. Behind the praise and photo ops, there was a warning carved in whispers. Don't speak too loud, don't live too boldly. Supermodels were meant to be seen, not heard. But Beverly had always been more than a face. And soon, the world would discover just how much she was carrying beneath that poise. But behind the flashbulbs and fanfare, Beverly Peele's world was beginning to crack. The first fracture came quietly, almost invisibly. At just 17, while still riding the peak of her fame, Beverly became pregnant. In an industry that demands perfection and punishes deviation, the news landed like a scandal. Overnight, contracts vanished. Campaigns she had already shot were shelved. The girl who would symbolize a generation's beauty was suddenly treated as a liability. Motherhood should have been a private joy. But in Beverly's world, it was a professional death sentence. They acted like I had ruined everything, she later recalled, like I was no longer usable. There was no support system, no pause button, just a wall. And on the other side of that wall, silence. Then came the accident. A brutal car crash left Beverly with multiple injuries and long-term physical trauma. The body that had built her career now betrayed her. Walking, let alone modeling, became a daily struggle. To manage the pain, she was prescribed medication. What began as treatment became dependence. The prescriptions numbed the wounds, both physical and emotional, but they also clouded her. In the years that followed, Beverly sank into a quiet fog. The industry moved on, as it always does. New faces emerged, new campaigns launched. But Beverly, once the darling of every major fashion house, was now a single mother navigating addiction, depression, and the unrelenting pressures of survival. Yet perhaps the most harrowing chapter came years later. In 2021, Beverly went public with an accusation that sent shockwaves through the fashion world, if only for a moment. She alleged that Gerald Marie, the powerful former CEO of Elite Model Management, had raped her multiple times when she was just 17. The revelation was devastating, but even more devastating was what followed. Nothing. No official statement from the fashion houses that had built her career. No uproar from the modeling world she helped shape. No mainstream media campaign calling for accountability. The silence was deafening. For Beverly, the industry's lack of response was a second betrayal. The first was what happened. The second was pretending it never did. Because when women speak, especially Black women, there is a cost, and Beverly paid it in full. They say resilience is born in silence, and Beverly Peele knew silence all too well. But she also knew how to reclaim a voice. In the years following her darkest chapters, Beverly didn't chase the spotlight. She redefined it. Slowly, steadily, she began to speak, not just for herself, but for the countless women whose stories had been buried beneath the glitter of the fashion world. She appeared on talk shows and in interviews, not to relive her trauma, but to name it, to own it. In doing so, she transformed her narrative from one of pain to one of purpose. "I'm not ashamed," she said in one interview. "What happened to me shouldn't have happened to anyone, but I survived, and I'm still here." Instead of striving to return to runways that turned their backs on her, Beverly built something more enduring, a voice that could not be ignored. She became a mother not just to her children, but to a new generation of young women who looked up to her, not for her cheekbones or campaigns, but for her courage. In a world that profits from silence, Beverly's refusal to be quiet became a rebellion. She began mentoring aspiring models, warning them of the industry's shadows while encouraging their light. Her story became a cautionary tale, yes, but also a blueprint for healing. Beverly never returned to the catwalk in the way others expected. There was no grand comeback, no Vogue spread to commemorate her re-entry. But there was something else, something stronger. She found wholeness. And in an industry that so often demands brokenness for beauty, that in itself was revolutionary. Beverly Peele's name may not appear in retrospectives of the Big Six, nor does she grace the nostalgia-fueled fashion montages that circle back to the 1990s. But perhaps that's the point. She was never meant to be easily categorized or comfortably remembered. Because Beverly Peele didn't just model clothes, she modeled complexity. She embodied a truth the fashion industry still struggles to accept, that beauty can bleed, that glamour can mask injustice, and that silence is never the answer. Her legacy doesn't lie in one perfect cover or campaign. It lies in the question she forced us to ask. Why are some women protected and others discarded? Why is survival punished more than scandalous hidden? And why, even now, do so many stories like hers remain unheard? In many ways, Beverly was too powerful for the time she came up in. She wasn't simply a muse, she was a mirror. And when that mirror reflected back truths the industry didn't want to see, they turned it face down. But history has a way of circling back to the voices it tried to erase. And in that echo, Beverly Peele still stands, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to truth, to survival, and to the kind of beauty that never asks for permission.